You've just come home from a gathering. Maybe it was a birthday party, a work event, or even just a long afternoon with people you genuinely like. Nothing went wrong. You laughed, you participated, you were present. And yet, the moment you close the door behind you, something in your chest unclenches. You don't turn on music. You don't call anyone to debrief. You just stand there in the quiet for a moment, letting the silence settle around you like something you've been waiting for all day. Or maybe it's smaller than that. Maybe it's the group chat that's been buzzing for hours, and even though you haven't typed a single word, you feel strangely tired just from reading it. You put your phone face down. You take a breath. And you wonder briefly if there's something wrong with you for needing this much stillness. But sometimes it's not shyness. It's not antisocial behavior. It's not even about whether you enjoyed yourself. It's simply how your brain spends energy. This video is educational. Different people recharge differently, and needing alone time doesn't automatically mean something is wrong with you. What we're exploring here is something quieter and more ordinary than it might first appear. Some people recover from their days by being around others. They talk through their experiences, absorb the energy of a room, and feel filled up by connection. But others recover differently. For them, being around people, however much they love those people, draws from a well that eventually needs refilling. And that refilling happens in silence, in solitude, in hours where no one needs anything from them. This isn't a flaw. It's not a failure of sociability. It's a different rhythm, and it's more common than most people admit. One reason social time can feel so depleting is the sheer amount of invisible work your brain performs during any interaction. You're tracking the emotional tone of the room. You're reading faces, interpreting pauses, adjusting your body language, timing your contributions, filtering what to say, choosing what to hold back. You're monitoring how you're being received while simultaneously processing what others are expressing. This takes mental effort, real cognitive resources, even when the interaction feels pleasant. For some people, this processing runs in the background without much friction. For others, it runs loud. The threshold for stimulation fills faster. The awareness is sharper. The inner experience of social engagement is simply more labor-intensive. Not because something is broken, but because sensitivity operates on a spectrum, and some people live further along it. Another reason involves the accumulation of small decisions. Think about a day at work where you've moved from meeting to meeting. Even if the meetings were fine, you've made dozens of micro-choices. When to speak, when to wait, how to phrase something diplomatically, whether to respond to that message now or later. Or consider a family gathering where you're navigating different personalities, sensing old tensions, trying to be present with everyone without neglecting anyone. By the time you leave, you're not just physically tired, you're mentally overdrawn. That's decision fatigue layered on top of social performance, and it accumulates quietly until your brain starts asking for rest in the only language it knows, the urge to be alone. There's also the weight of environments that demand constant alertness. Picture yourself at a crowded market on a Saturday morning, weaving through strangers, dodging carts, processing noise and movement from every direction. Or waiting at an airport gate, surrounded by announcements and crowds and the low hum of collective impatience. Or finally arriving home after a long travel day, where even though you barely spoke to anyone, the hours of navigating terminals and sitting in cramped spaces have left you feeling hollowed out. These settings aren't social in the traditional sense, but they still draw from the same well. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a difficult conversation and an overwhelming errand. Stimulation is stimulation, and for some people, it adds up fast. Then there's the emotional dimension. If you're someone who absorbs the moods around you, social time can leave you carrying feelings that aren't even yours. A friend's anxiety after a long heart-to-heart. A coworker's frustration during a tense project. A family member's unspoken sadness at a holiday dinner. You pick these up without meaning to, and later, in solitude, you finally get the space to sort through what belongs to you and what doesn't. Alone time becomes a way of restoring your emotional boundaries. Not building walls, but remembering where you end and others begin. Beyond this, some people simply process experience differently. Not everyone makes sense of their lives out loud. Some people need to take things inward first. The conversation, the event, the complicated interaction, it doesn't fully land until later, when they're alone and can turn it over quietly in their minds. This isn't avoidance. It's just a different processing style. The meaning comes after the moment, not during it. It's well understood that environments with less stimulation, quiet rooms, natural settings, even repetitive simple tasks, can help restore depleted attention. This is why a walk alone, or an hour of doing something low demand, can feel so restorative. And yet, even knowing all of this, there's often guilt. You worry about seeming rude when you leave early. You wonder if people think you're flaky when you decline an invitation. You imagine the conversations happening without you, the assumptions being made. What will they think if I need this much space? Am I being selfish? Am I bad at relationships? This pressure can make solitude feel like something to hide rather than something to honor. But the need for quiet isn't a character flaw. It's not evidence that you care less. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is step away before you're running on empty. Here's where things get interesting, and maybe a little contradictory. People who need alone time aren't a single type. They can be warm and affectionate, and still need space. They can be outgoing at a party, and then crash hard the next day. They can love deep, meaningful conversation, and still feel drained after it. They can be confident in social settings while also feeling quietly overstimulated. They can be quiet, but not weak. They can enjoy being around others and genuinely prefer their own company. They can seem perfectly fine in the moment and only realize later how much it cost them. These contradictions don't mean something is off. They mean that human beings are more layered than simple categories allow. Now, a gentle word about something worth noticing. There's a difference between alone time that restores you and alone time that becomes a way of hiding. Healthy solitude usually leaves you feeling more like yourself. You return to the world a little clearer, a little more grounded, and you find yourself eventually wanting connection again. But sometimes, pulling away starts to feel less like rest and more like retreat. You might notice that you're canceling plans not because you need space, but because facing people feels like too much. The alone hours stretch longer, but they don't actually replenish anything. Life gets smaller, not because you're choosing focus, but because everything outside your walls has started to feel overwhelming. Solitude that nourishes tends to lead back toward connection eventually. Solitude that isolates tends to feed on itself. If you're someone who needs alone hours to recharge, here are some things worth holding on to. Needing a breather doesn't make you less caring. Leaving early doesn't mean you didn't enjoy yourself. Choosing quiet doesn't mean you're rejecting anyone. Saying no to plans can be an act of honesty, not cruelty. You can love people deeply and still need time away from them. Your capacity for social energy is not a measure of your worth. The people who matter will understand. And the ones who don't understand can still be told, gently, what you need. You don't have to justify it with a long explanation. Something as simple as saying, "I had a wonderful time, and now I need some quiet to recharge. It's nothing personal," is enough. For messages, something like, "I'm going offline for a bit. I'll reply later," works just as well. You're not asking for permission. You're just communicating honestly. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. As you move through your days, pay attention to what restores you. Notice when you're running low. Give yourself permission to step away before you're completely empty. And if you share your life with people who recharge differently than you do, try to extend them the same understanding you'd want for yourself. Different rhythms aren't right or wrong. They're just different. One last thought. If you find that your alone time never quite restores you anymore, if the hours pass but the heaviness stays, if your world keeps getting smaller and you're not sure why, it might be worth talking to someone qualified to help you sort through it. That's not an alarm. It's just an option worth knowing about. But for most people, most of the time, needing solitude is simply part of how you're built. It's not a problem to solve. It's a rhythm to honor. So take the quiet when you need it. Close the door. Let the silence settle. And trust that you'll come back to the world when you're ready.